Imagine you are standing barefoot in the dust of an ancient training ground, the sun blinding your eyes, sweat already dripping down your face though the day has barely begun. You are 17 years old, nervous and holding nothing more than a heavy wooden sword. In front of you, a centurion barks orders in a voice roughened by years of battle, his tone making it clear that hesitation is not an option. This is your first day as a Roman recruit, a tyro. You are about to begin one of the most grueling journeys a young man in the ancient world could ever face. The question is simple but terrifying. Could you survive? But as you soon discover, survival begins long before the battlefield. Most recruits entered the Roman legions in their late teens or early 20s. 17 was the legal minimum age, though records suggest that many were 18, 19 or 20 when they enlisted. Veterans could still serve into their 40s and even 50s, but the bulk of Rome's manpower was drawn from young men, barely out of childhood, whose bodies could withstand 25 years of punishing service. The Romans believed that youth meant stamina, adaptability and obedience. In short, they wanted men young enough to mould, but strong enough to endure the weight of armour, shield and endless marching. For you, this means you are entering at the exact age Rome expected. You are young, nervous and largely unprepared for what is coming, and yet by the end of this journey you may either be hardened into a soldier or broken entirely. The first test comes not with a sword, but with a vow you cannot escape. Your journey begins with enlistment. Officials measure you, inspect your chest, check your teeth, and make sure you are of proper height, around 5'6" at minimum, tall by Roman standards. If you pass this crude physical, you are accepted. Then comes the Sacramentum, the sacred oath. You swear before the gods and before Rome herself that you will obey orders without question, that you will never desert, and that you will place the empire above your own life. From this moment, you no longer belong to yourself. You are government property. Once your name is entered into the records, there is no turning back. Those who try to flee face execution. The centurion makes it brutally clear: Rome does not tolerate cowards. But what comes next is even more crushing, for the training has only just begun. The first shock comes when you discover that you won't even touch a real sword for weeks. You dig ditches under the hot sun, chop wood and haul heavy stones to build camps and roads. You are expected to march miles with burdens that leave your shoulders aching and your legs quivering. At first this feels pointless. Where is the glory, the swordplay, the heroics? But the truth is clear. Rome doesn't just need killers. Rome needs builders, engineers and men who can endure relentless work without collapsing. Only after weeks of this drudgery are you handed weapons, but they are not what you expect. Your sword is a rudis made of wood, but deliberately heavier than a steel gladius. Your shield, too, is weighted, forcing you to hold and maneuver something bulkier than the real thing. You spend hours hacking and stabbing at wooden posts called pali, repeating the motions until your arms shake and your hands blister. This is not glamorous, it is relentless conditioning designed to make the real weapons feel light in comparison. Yet even this is not the worst of it, because some Roman training methods were as dangerous as real combat itself. Some of the practices feel downright cruel. Centurions often forced recruits into mock battles with blunted weapons, but blunted did not mean safe. Broken bones and cracked skulls were common, and if you were too slow to block, the injury could end your career before it began. Another exercise required you to swim rivers in full armor with shield and sword strapped to your back. Many recruits drowned, dragged under by the weight. This wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. The army believed that if you couldn't survive water, you didn't deserve to march with Rome. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the psychological pressure. Centurions ruled with an iron fist, their whips cracking across your back if you faltered, their punishments humiliating and severe. Fear became your constant companion. To the Romans, fear was discipline, and discipline was survival. But fear on the training ground was nothing compared to fear on the march. If you made it through drills, the next ordeal was the march itself. Rome was a moving war machine, and every soldier carried his world on his back. That meant 80 pounds of equipment, helmet, shield, armor, rations, tools, even stakes for building the nightly camp. You were expected to march 20 miles in a single day without falling behind. If you stumbled, you were beaten. If you collapsed, you were abandoned. Centurions delighted in making things harder. You might be ordered to run in full armor, to climb hills with your pack, or to march through the night without rest. It was said that a legion could cover more ground in a day than any other army in the ancient world. That endurance was paid for in sweat and suffering. And yet the march was only preparation for something even deadlier, the discipline of life and death itself. The cruelty of punishment hung over every recruit like a shadow. Falling asleep on guard duty was a death sentence. Cowardice in battle meant execution. And if an entire unit was guilty of mutiny or failure, Rome imposed the most dreaded punishment of all, decimation. Every 10th man was chosen by lot and beaten to death by his comrades, while the survivors were forced to continue fighting with the memory of their brother's blood on their hands. This was no idle threat. The Romans carried it out, leaving men broken by fear, united in terror of their officers more than of the enemy. Discipline forged an army unlike any other. Fear of the enemy was nothing compared to fear of your centurion. But fear alone could not prepare you for your first real clash with death. The moment of battle. The horns blare. The ground shakes beneath the tramp of thousands of sandals. You line up in formation, shield locked with the man beside you. Across the field, painted warriors scream and pound their chests. Your heart races, then the order comes. Advance. You hurl your pilum, a heavy javelin designed to pierce shields and stick fast. The enemy staggers, then you charge. Your wooden training sword has been replaced with a steel gladius, short and deadly. You don't swing wildly like in the movies, you thrust fast and brutal, aiming for stomachs and throats. The training takes over. Stab, step, shield, repeat. Blood splashes your legs. Men fall around you, some friends, some foes. The noise is deafening. The stench is choking. The only thought in your mind is survival. This is the moment every recruit dreads and desires. The chance to prove himself or to die in his first clash. And when the clash ends, the horror is far from over. When the dust settles, the true nightmare begins. The battlefield is littered with corpses. The cries of the wounded echo in your ears, and the air reeks of blood and smoke. You may be ordered to strip the enemy of weapons and armor, to dig mass graves, or to burn bodies before disease spreads. If you expected celebration, you find only exhaustion. Some men break down after their first battle, unable to cope with what they've seen. Others harden, burying their fear beneath layers of discipline. But this is only the beginning, because Rome demanded not one battle but decades of them. Your life as a Roman soldier did not end after a single campaign. Service lasted 25 years. That meant decades of marching, building and fighting. You might be stationed on the Rhine, enduring freezing winters and constant raids by Germanic tribes. Or you might find yourself under the scorching sun of Syria, guarding the empire's eastern frontier against Parthia. Disease, hunger and boredom killed almost as many soldiers as swords. Most recruits never lived to see retirement. Those who did were rewarded with land, money and citizenship for their families, but the price was steep. 25 years of your youth traded for the promise of security if you survived. And history shows us that survival was never guaranteed. Some recruits became legends, remembered for valor carved into stone inscriptions. Others vanished into obscurity, their bones lying in forgotten graves. Entire legions disappeared, like the mysterious 9th Legion, last recorded in Britain before vanishing from the records. Were they annihilated in battle, ambushed in the forests of Scotland, or quietly transferred east to die in the sands of Parthia? For those men, survival was never guaranteed. Even great commanders admitted that luck played as much a role as skill. A well-placed arrow, a collapse during a march, or a simple infection could end your career instantly. No matter how strong you were, fortune had the final say, and so the question remains, could you have survived? The average recruit was barely more than a boy when he began, hardened through years of pain, discipline and terror. Few of us today can imagine carrying 80 pounds on our backs for miles, running drills until our arms gave out, or facing the lash for a single mistake. Even fewer could endure 25 years of service in a world where death lurked in every river crossing, every battle, every winter frost. And yet, it was these recruits, 17-year-olds with wooden swords and blistered hands, who built an empire that lasted for centuries. They paved the roads, guarded the frontiers, and spilled their blood so that Rome might endure. The question is not just whether you could survive. The question is whether you could endure long enough to earn your place among them. Could you have stood shoulder to shoulder in the dust and blood of battle? Could you have endured the punishments, the fear, and the endless years of hardship? Or would the Roman war machine have crushed you before you ever raised your shield? So, I'll ask again, could you survive as a Roman recruit? If you believe you could, let me know in the comments below. Would you have had the strength, the discipline, and the luck to endure? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of history.